Welcome to the Great Canadian Comeback, where we break down the stories, trends, and shifts happening across Canada and the moves people are making to stay ahead of what's coming next. Welcome to another episode of the Great Canadian Comeback podcast. So today we got some exciting stuff that we're going to be discussing. So basically over the last few years, probably even longer, there's been a lot of negativity about Canada, basically where Canada's been heading. A lot of criticism about the types of deals they've been doing, just a lot of negativity and criticism in general. But today we're going to be going through some amazing things that have happened over the last week or so that are making big headlines and that are going to be affecting Canadians' pockets in a good way, meaning that the entire country is going to be going in the right direction, making some money, making a lot of progress. So things are going to definitely be very, very exciting coming very, very soon. So let's jump in. I'm going to be discussing a couple of big things that just happened over the last little bit. So the first thing that we're going to be discussing is Canada just announced a nearly $70 billion energy buildout. And are we finally building big again? Is that the question? So basically, what happened is on August 17th, Ottawa announced the support for a group of Newfoundland and Labrador, Quebec hydro projects centered on Churchill Falls and the proposed Gull Island development. The projects are valued at about nearly $70 billion, which is the federal government is calling the largest clean energy investment in North American history. The largest clean energy investment in North American history that's going to be providing a ton of energy for Canada, and we can sell it to many other countries as well. So Ottawa is offering up to $10 billion in federal financial support and investment. The planned build out could produce about 14,000 megawatts of renewable power, support roughly 23,000 jobs, and contribute an estimated $31 billion to the Canadian GDP through the early 2040s. Importantly, some of the infrastructure would also help unlock critical mineral development in the Labrador Trout. And your comeback, this is going to be incredible. So basically, what's happening is we're seeing a lot of investment in a massive energy product, and they're going to be basically making one of the biggest renewable energy investments in history for North America. So this is huge for Canada because we're actually tapping into what we're strong at, which is we're tapping into our natural resources, which can be used to create this renewable energy. So it's exciting times right now. The government just announced it, and this can be a massive investment that will be paying Canadians, creating jobs, and creating a lot of income for the country for many, many years to come. They're saying well into the 2040s is the infrastructure going to be bringing in a ton of investment and capital. So it's quite exciting. And now a few different offsets of this that are coming about are basically there's a lot of jobs coming in. So there's 23,000 jobs expected from this particular basically investment and this renewable energy product that we're putting out there. So that's exciting times. And what else is kind of happening is because of the development and because of all the infrastructure that they're putting in, they're going to be unlocking a lot of minerals. They're going to be unlocking a lot of other things that are around that area that we'll also be able to sell. So it's like a win-win for Canada because we're going to be doing a massive energy renewable infrastructure, $70 billion infrastructure, and it's going to create a ton for the economy, a ton for jobs, and just a ton in general, like building houses and things like that. So everyone is going to prosper off what is called the largest clean energy investment and production ever in North American history. So that's exciting, and it's big news, and we have the resources, we have the land, the energy and the talent, and we just can't get things done even faster. So it's exciting times, and what's kind of happening is we're witnessing the beginning of the era of the Canadian comeback. We're witnessing some of the most exciting investments that are happening. So a lot of the criticism over the many years has been Canada's not, they're not using what they're good at, which is like we got the land, we got the minerals, we got all these renewable energy sources because out here on the West Coast in Vancouver, we got BC Hydro. So we use a lot of the energy from the water to run these dams to get that clean energy going. So if we're really good at these certain things to create energy, then why are we not, tapping into a lot of our strengths? Well, now we actually are. So it's actually happening. So the criticism may hopefully stop. There's always going to be criticism out there, regardless of what you do. But what's happening right now is Canada is investing in these areas, so it is exciting, and the future looks extremely bright, and the Canadian comeback is in full force. So if you're a betting person and if you're looking to bet on the future, a lot of people are pouring a lot of capital into Canada, meaning they're betting heavy on Canada for the future because we have everything we got here. And if we unlock it in the proper ways, we can be a powerhouse moving forward. And we're already seeing that. So there's some major things happening. And that was one of the big plays that this government just put together. And I can't emphasize this enough, but this is massive, a $70 billion clean energy infrastructure project. And that is the largest in North American history. So basically, we are going to be leading the entire North America with this massive clean energy project, and we'll be able to sell a lot of this energy to other countries, hopefully particularly our neighbor to the south, the US, who's going to need a lot of power. And if we can provide that with this clean energy infrastructure that we just invested in, it is going to be huge. So it's exciting. And it's going to create a ton of different jobs. A ton of different industries are going to benefit from this. The mining industries are already seeing a lot of excitement because the areas that they're working on, they're going to be unlocking a lot of minerals that they can begin mining. So, this project isn't just going to be a one-off just for this clean energy. We're going to be able to unlock a lot of other things as well. And because of this massive energy project, there may be some big AI data centers that want to invest and come around that area so they can tap into all of this energy that we're going to be creating in that area. So it could bring about a lot of tech jobs, a lot of AI industries. So there's going to be a ton of different spin-off businesses that are going to come off. So the projections are just looking at the $70 billion project for this one clean energy infrastructure is going to be big for many different industries. So these are the headlines that have just been hitting over the last little bit. And it is really exciting about this one particular project that they have in place. So let's jump into the next one that we're going to be looking at and what's kind of happening. So we got some other exciting news basically happening. Canada could become one of the most important uranium suppliers on Earth. So Canada could become one of the largest uranium suppliers on Earth, and this is what's kind of happening. What's happening? Saskatchewan's Next Gen Energy has moved into construction activity at its Rook I uranium project while seeking roughly $1 billion in financing over the coming months. Reuters reported August 17th that NextGen has also been in discussions with global mining giant BHP. Although there is currently no announced BHP investment, however, they are in works and talking to them. The scale is what makes this interesting. NextGen describes Rook I as the largest high-grade uranium deposit currently under development and says its permitted annual production could represent more than 20% of current global primary uranium supply and around half of Western supply. And uranium suddenly matters enormously because nuclear power is being reconsidered globally as countries look for renewable, reliable electricity for industry's growth, electrification, and increasing AI data center power and demand. And Canada has now invested a ton into global energy, and they're big into this product. So once again, another massive project is in place. Saskatchewan has just found one of the largest uranium deposits out there. So once this kicks in and they start pulling this uranium out, we're going to be contributing to 20% of the world's supply of uranium and 50% of the Western world's supply. That's huge. That basically puts Canada definitely in the number one position just for Western nations to be providing uranium. Secondly, we're going to be a 20% producer in the global market. That is massive for a country with a smaller population, but massive landmass. What that means is basically we're going to be one of the forefront headrunners supplying one of the most critical minerals for the rest of the world. Why this is big, why this matters so much is because nuclear energy is being rethought of right now. They're looking at it in a different perspective because technology has come so far. There's a lot of different advancements that have happened. Nuclear energy is becoming safer. It's becoming a product that's providing a ton of energy in particular regions that, don't have access to hydro or wind or solar and things like that. Nuclear can produce a ton of power. And with electricity and power being at the forefront of conversations these days, we're going to be one of the headline runners because now with this uranium deposit, we're going to be able to sell the uranium to other countries that want to build nuclear energy production. We can be one of the heads that are basically selling this to many other countries that want to supply this. And again, just being our neighbor to the south, the U.S., they're big on nuclear. They're massive, especially with defense and their army and things like that, and being one of the top producers of also nuclear weapons, right? So we can be a provider in that because we have the uranium deposits. So the way Canada is looking at this and the strategic outlook is basically if we have this deposit, which they now have found, and Saskatchewan is now trying to partner up with one of the largest BHP mining companies out there to basically unearth all this uranium. Now, if they could pull this out of the ground, be the 20% supplier in the world market, 50% supplier in the Western world. I don't know how to kind of put this in perspective, but this is pretty massive. If all of the Western countries out there, and there's a lot of them, of course, with all their income, their population, the Western mentality and things like that, if Canada has 50% of all of their uranium of all of those countries combined, and they're the ones supplying it, it is going to be massive as a lot are relying on nuclear. Nuclear is going to be a very clean production moving forward. And again, it can't be overstated how important energy is, especially with the AI data centers and where AI is going and the use of technology and the need for energy. It is massive that the fact that their uranium deposits are here and what it's going to play. So let's put this scenario into a little bit of perspective in terms of how this is going to play out. Well, if we have this massive deposit in Saskatchewan and we're going to be providing it to the rest of the world, or let's just say we want to be providing it just to Western nations, we're going to be the 50% supplier on the market. Now, if we're the 50% supplier, we're basically providing half of the uranium for a small population country like Canada. Everyone here is going to benefit. All of us are going to benefit because we're going to be selling this massive deposit of uranium throughout the world or throughout Western Canada, and we're going to be a massive global player. So what would this mean for you and I as just Canadians, everyday Canadians? Well, it's going to be big because we're going to be a massive supplier. And now when you're selling something, all of us will benefit. We're going to be reaping the rewards of the income of all the basically the projects taking place. So we're going to be reaping the rewards of the mining. We're going to be reaping the rewards of everything, all the infrastructure that's coming into that Saskatchewan region for the mining of this uranium. So it's going to be very exciting times. And that's just another big play in the energy sector. And if we're doing this with uranium, it just looks very exciting for the outlook on Canada and where things are heading. And one thing I touched on earlier that I do want to reemphasize is the fact that, over the last many years, probably even a decade or so, there's been a ton of criticism around Canada saying, hey, like we've gone this one route that we're not using our strengths, which is the land mass that we have, which is all these minerals that we have, which is the possibility of untapping some of these huge deposits that the rest of the world wants desperately. They need it. Like energy is so important in many, like everyone needs energy, right? So especially with this whole AI data trend that's happening, energy is very, very important. Now, this is the second project that has just been announced over just the last few weeks. So it's like, oh, wow, we just found one of the largest uranium deposits in the entire world. And if we unearth this, we're going to be 20% of the world's supplier in uranium. And as a Western nation, we're going to be the 50% biggest supplier out here. So with this discovery and this unearthing of this uranium, it's going to be a big thing for everyday Canadians because we're all going to benefit. We're now selling something that the world needs and wants, and we'll be able to be, again, a big player. So moving forward, this is going to be a great thing for Canadians. We're all going to benefit, and the economy is going to really benefit really well with in terms of jobs, the everything that's getting created around that area. So it's going to be super exciting of what's kind of happening. And not just they're saying there's going to be a lot of other exciting stuff that's coming out of there, natural gas, oil, copper, nickel, potash, and then basically critical minerals. So it's really exciting kind of where things are going. And Canadians' natural resources aren't part of the old economy, but now what's happening is it's a big part of our new economy. So a lot of people were critical before because they were like, our natural resources wasn't a big play for what we were doing in the past, but now the exciting thing is it is a big play for what we're doing now and into the future, because a lot of these investments now are taking place and they're going to benefit us for many, many years to come. And it could be possibly decades and decades to come. So it's going to be a very bright, exciting future for all Canadians and especially the next generation. So very exciting time. So let's jump into the next thing that's kind of happening out there that's making headlines. Canada's housing market is showing early signs of waking up. Hello. All right. That makes me excited. I'm in the real estate industry. So if Canada is showing early signs if the housing market is showing early signs of waking up, that is very exciting. And we're just going to look at today's new CRA members are actually interesting. So what's happening is Canadian home prices increased another 0.5% in July, marking the fourth consecutive monthly increase. The MLS Home Price Index also edged up 0.1% month over month, while new listings declined 1.6%. It's definitely not a housing boom. However, sales remain below last year's levels. Prices are still down 3.3% year over year, and CMHC reported July housing starts down significantly versus last year. But that's what makes this discussion interesting, because the Bank of Canada is currently holding its policy rate at 2.25%, and its July outlook says Canadian economic growth has been weak, but is expected to pick up. Now, have we reached the point where the Canadian housing market is finally starting to find its footing? So we've seen a few consecutive months of some minor, however, positive gains in the housing market. So if we've only seen 0.5% for 4 months, that adds up and it looks pretty good because we are on a trajectory of an exciting future. So if the housing market is showing signs of life, it's starting to wake up, It is all tied together because a lot of people are beginning to get excited about Canada. Now, capital is starting to flow back into the country. There are people that are thinking, hey, Canada's future looks very bright. And it definitely does. And that's why the housing market is reacting the way it is. Now, we just talked about a couple different articles earlier and how this housing market one ties in. It ties in beautifully because of this particular reason. If we're seeing the housing market starting to show signs of waking up, that means there's confidence in the economy. And if the economy is moving in the right direction, which it looks like it is because these investments are coming in into these massive industries, then we're going to have some excitement down the road with all this reinvestment into natural resources, reinvestment into energy, reinvestment into everything that Canada is strong in. A lot of our industries are going to pick up, specifically the housing market, because us Canadians will benefit because we will be looking to either upsize, downsize. There'll be transactions taking place. Hopefully, there's going to be a ton of new jobs being created, and there's going to be a lot of economic activity that's taking place, because if capital is flowing back into Canada from international investors, international excitement, we're going to see a lot of things benefit, particularly the housing market. And we saw a lot of this, especially during a few different times in the past. So particularly in Vancouver, when we hosted the Winter Olympics, after the Winter Olympics, we saw a big boom in the housing market because a lot of people visited here, saw how beautiful it is, all the benefits of Vancouver in Canada, and they wanted to invest and buy some houses here and things like that. Now we saw just FIFA take place in Canada, basically in Vancouver and Toronto. And again, a lot of spotlight on these two cities. And a lot of feedback was there. People were very excited. They're like, wow, this is an amazing place to be. So if we saw a little bit of that international eyes come in, now we're seeing a ton of investment taking place, particularly in the areas that we're strong in, which is natural resources, energy, renewables, and things like that. And we're seeing investment taking place in those areas. Who's going to benefit? Particularly the housing market is going to benefit. It's going to be a great thing for all Canadians, because now if the housing market starts to boom, everyone benefits. Now there'll be activities happening, transactions taking place, and hopefully if you're getting into the real estate market yourself, it's going to be a very bright future moving forward. So if we're looking at the signals that are there, like it's a matter of what's going to happen, what's taking place. Just to recap these three articles, the first one was about the new energy project that's taking place. So basically the largest clean energy project in all of North American history, $70 billion investment, and it'll be producing some of the largest energy outputs seen for a very long time. So that is going to benefit not only that particular industry of Newfoundland and Labrador and Quebec area, but it's also going to bring a ton of capital investment into Canada because of all the energy being created. Second article we're discussing was basically the uranium deposits that are coming out of Saskatchewan, the largest uranium deposit they've seen for a very long time, putting Canada at the 20% producer of uranium in the entire world, which is huge, and it puts them at 50% of Western nations. Now, how is that going to benefit Canada? Well, if we're selling another critical mineral that the rest of the world needs, it's going to put us in a situation of a supplier. We're going to be selling a product that others want, and we have that product, and we'll be able to sell it and make money on that particular product. And the third article we're talking about is the housing market. The housing market is showing signs of life and has seen 4 consecutive months of some minor tick-ups. So if it's slowly showing some waking up signs of life, that means the future looks incredibly bright. So if we tie in all 3 articles together, this is what this podcast is all about, the Great Canadian Comeback. So we're looking at some exciting times coming soon. And if it's not just me, I hope you guys are as excited for the Canadian comeback because it looks very bright. So double down. If you're a betting, wagering person, put some money on Canada because we are coming back in full force. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Great Canadian Comeback, discussing these three excellent, excellent investments and articles that are hitting headlines right now that are showing Canada is coming back soon. So thank you for listening. Tune in to the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Great Canadian Comeback. Follow the show for more episodes and check the links in the description for more information. We'll see you next time.